Hello and welcome everyone back to the Paddock Podcast. The last race weekend was a spectacular one as Carlin driver Liam Lawson secures the F2 Drivers' Championship with 3 races still to go in the season. I was able to get a hold of Alex Jack before qualifying begins as we are here in Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix.
Thanks for having me, and I'm glad to be here, even though my weekend schedule is pretty tight with all the racing going on. But with the F2 driver's title secured, there still is a chance for the Constructors title to be grabbed, not only from Carlin, but from Virtuosi. They are currently P2 in the Constructors standings and hope for a good result this weekend. With the win in Spa going to Sato and an early DNF for Johnson, there is still plenty of action to go on for the remainder of the season.
We just wanted that little check-in from Alex as he's up and out of our booth as we near the start of F2 qualifying here in Zandvoort. So sit back and enjoy the show as there is some overcast weather that may bring some rain into the mix of this weekend.
As we wind down from the excitement of qualifying, here's a look at your top 3.
Lawson, Williams, and Yuri Vips.
Goodbye for now then, but we really are just getting started. Make sure you join us again for Lights Out tomorrow.
Welcome along to Zandvoort for another fascinating Formula 2 race today. 4 lefts and 10 rights make up the 14 corners of the narrow and demanding Zandvoort circuit, with plenty of peaks and valleys over the course of the 2.6-mile lap, which will demand absolute concentration from our drivers here today. Here are the starting positions for today's race. Liam Lawson lines up on pole position, and it's Callan Williams in P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Vips, Awasa, Marino Sato, Novalak, Sargent, Vesti, Porcher, Jan Deruvala, Armstrong, Drugovic, Dennis Hauger,
Tatiana Calderon,
Fittipaldi, Hughes, Caldwell, Amory Cordial, Verschoor, Boschong, Johnson, and Roy Nissany completes the grid. And now it's time to head down to the track. Alongside me today, I'm delighted to welcome back to the commentary box the 2012 GP2 champion, Davide Valsecchi. There looks to be a challenging race ahead of the drivers today, Davide. With that in mind, what are you looking out for today?
Well, Alex, I want to see how the drivers at the back of the grid are going to roll down. They'll need to make an impact in the early stages, and they're probably hoping for a bit of luck at the start. We may see some bold maneuvers out there today.
The formation lap gets underway for this, the Formula 2 race, and every driver will be looking to settle in for the race ahead, making sure the car is ready for battle once the lights go out. We are almost ready to start the Formula 2 race as the cars take their positions on the grid, with the drivers and teams making their final preparations.
Alright, once again, we're going to be going with the primary strategy. Long on the hards, short on the softs. Very unfortunate for us to not make the start-finish line for our final run in qualifying. We're going to be starting the back row there as we're earliest to take advantage of those tires. Our 5 red lights are coming on. We're going to be side by side with Nissani, see what kind of improvement we can make. Off to a good start. That's going to be for sure ahead of us. Off to a bad start. Almost 3 wide, 4 wide ahead of us. We're up into P19, moving to the outside. And passing Caldwell there as we're up into P17, side by side with Hauger fighting for P17. Taking a little bit of a curve, not too much. Don't want to get caught on the grass there, and trying to feather our throttle as best as we can. As we're still side by side with Hauger in the Red Bull print car. I believe that's the Dams. I don't know. Yeah, that's the Dams in Hauger. But we are up in the P16 ahead of Cordial. And that's Calderon and Fittipaldi up there in P14, P15, who are side by side. We're halfway through this first lap, and we're already up in the P16, so we're making some good positions. Being very patient, especially with all these side-by-sides going on. Fittipaldi, Calderon still ahead, side-by-side, and then Cordial and Hauger behind us, who are side-by-side as well. You saw there momentarily ago. As we're coming up to the end of Sector 2, start of Sector 3. I think we already started Sector 3, but this final right-hander to this left-hander hairpin. DRS activation line is back here. Right, that line that we just crossed there is feeling pretty good. 6/10 back behind Fittipaldi and Calderon. As could have had a little bit more control out of that corner, but this embankment here is very powerful when it comes to DRS, ERS along this main straight. So that's going to be a pretty good start to our race. Lap 1 up in the P16. Now we're moving on to the end of lap 3. Fittipaldi, Calderon are still ahead of us, but we have DRS, a little bit of a control there, and we have that momentum with the DRS line. We're going to try to move Fittipaldi to the inside and take the outside line. We're going to be moving out there, and if Calderon was a little bit farther ahead, we would have had an advantage here. But we're not quite there yet. Fittipaldi still holding on to P15 as we're on the lap 4. We're going to be jumping to the end of lap 4, where we're going to try again for P15. We're going to make the same move Fittipaldi to the inside. We're not going to be as aggressive as the last time around. We're going to move in the outside line, and we're going to see about putting the power down a little bit sooner. I'll try to cut off to the inside of Fittipaldi, but we do manage to get up into P15 between Fittipaldi and Calderon. So we are running very well. 5 laps into this race, and we are looking for a good result. We're going to get up into the points all the way up to P8, where Sargent is. Sato's up in P6, as we're pretty much waiting for another move. And at lap 5, we're going to try to make a move on Calderon this time. So 3 laps consecutively, we try to make moves on these 2 drivers for P14. We make a move easily on the outside, and we brake a little bit later, carrying that speed on the embankment there in turns 1 and 2, taking up P14 against Calderon. And next up is Hughes up there in P13. As we come out of that hairpin through the start of Sector 2, feeling very comfortable throughout this race. We've managed to take care of our tires and get up as close as we can to Hughes. Hughes still about 3/10 ahead as we're coming around these final few corners before our pit stop. So lap 11, we have DRS on Hughes. There's our activation line, or timing line, and then our activation line is here. We're going to be pressing on the gas early, taking as much curb as we can, and we're going to be coming into the pits, but we want to get ahead of Hughes, so we move on the outside and we push him in. I don't know if he was wanting to come into the pits, but he ends up coming into the pits behind us. Very risky move on our part. We make the timing line, no penalty for speeding in the pit lane. I'm going to be swapping over to the soft tires to finish out the rest of this race. Decent release. Hauger back there in P22, still coming into the pits, as we're back up in the P16 as of right now. Head of Hughes, Fittipaldi, Hauger, Caldwell, for sure, Nissani back there in P22. Still Armstrong, Vesti, Lawson back in P12, Drogovic ahead of us in P15. You saw we are up in the good box of Drogovic. And that's going to be lap 12 to warm up our soft tires. Coming around the last few corners behind Drogovic, as you can see the pit changes as people are coming through their pit stops. and we're seeing where we can kind of end up here as we cross the start-finish line. And we're gonna face the smoke. Can't really see anything. Wasn't sure really where to go, but what I do know is Drugovich smoked all over our car. We had to make an invasive move, almost into the back end of the Ruvula there in P10 as we make up a position against Porcher coming out of the pits. As very unfortunate for Drugovich as we deal with this virtual safety car, not strong enough for a full safety car. But we're sitting comfortably in P11 as we move on to our commentators.
This has been quite the race, hasn't it, Crofty? A lot of action as we have 6 laps remaining here in Zandvoort for the F2 Dutch Grand Prix.
You're right, Alex. There has been plenty of action. We had a smoking gearbox along the main straight on Drugovich's car, but the best performance I've seen during the race is that of Johnson in the Virtuosi car. He has had amazing race pace and working his way through the grid and gaining some places with his pit stop strategy as well.
That car having issues in Spa definitely doesn't help Johnson, and not being able to cross the start-finish line yesterday during qualifying makes things even worse. He missed the line by about a second, and that probably would have put him in the top 10 at the start of the race. Unfortunately, he had to start all the way on the back row in 21st, but that has not stopped him one bit.
I'm sure he's on par to get driver of the day, don't you think? And he made up several positions on the first lap and put up a good fight through the grid before his pit stop. But what may have been a very risky and controversial move put Johnson ahead of Hughes coming into the pits. Any later, he probably would have gotten a fine or penalty from the stewards for crossing the white line on pit entry.
I'm surprised he was able to keep control of that car with how early he put the power down for that move. But I wanted to recap on what just happened with Drugovich. He went up in smoke in front of Johnson, and from the onboard we saw there was literally no visibility from behind, which put Johnson into a very dangerous situation, especially coming up to the braking zone.
You have to remember the reaction skills of the drivers, though. A move like that from Johnson is the right thing to do. Even though it took him off the racing line, he was able to move safely so Drugovich could retire the car.
You can never get tired of the driver's skills in Formula Racing, as Johnson is currently fighting for P9 against the other American on the grid of Logan Sargent.
And yes, we are fighting very strongly against Logan. About 6/10 or so with DRS activated on the end of lap 14. But it's lap 16 where we're finally going to be able to make a move the end of lap 16 here, hitting that DRS line once again. That's going to be Sato up there in P7, our teammate. So we're going to make a move on Sargent here, moving him to the outside, doing the same thing that we did with Calderon and the teammates, the Fittipaldi, moving to the outside and putting the power down a little bit sooner than we would want, holding that outside line, taking as much curve as possible. That's going to be moving us up into P8 against Logan Sargent, Lawson, Vips, Iwasa for the top 3, Williams, Novalak, Armstrong, Sato, myself for our top 8 for points. And that's going to be a DNF for Vesti as well, as we defend our position here for P8 here in the Dutch Grand Prix.
It was a magnificent race and a drive right out of the top draw to take the win for Carlin today. Tell me, Davide, what was the key to this success?
This race, this win, was about one thing and one thing only: consistency. Anyone can be quick for just one lap, but there's a difference between that and being quick every lap, over and over and over. If you can do that, if you can gain ground when your opponents make mistakes, but then not make mistakes on your own, you can just push and push.
And there you have it, today's winners. Having raised some of the biggest names in F1 to date, Carlin have once again shown their expertise when it comes to recruiting new talent. No doubt today's winners have a bright future ahead of them. They certainly deserve it after today's performance. So then, it's time to see how this result affects the Drivers' Championship. Liam Lawson extends his lead at the top, getting ever closer to securing the championship. And now, Davide Valsecchi, let me ask you, who is your driver of the day?
Lots of driver impressed me today, Alex. But if I have to say one that impressed me most, it's Liam Lawson.
On to the teams then. Carlin have extended their lead at the top of the standings. There will be plenty more twists and turns to come this season. I hope you'll join us at the next race when Formula 2 returns.